Christ my Lord, the giver of light and wisdom, who opened the eyes of the blind man and transformed the fishermen into wise heralds and teachers of the gospel through the coming of the Holy Spirit, shine also in my mind the light of the grace of the Holy Spirit. Grant me discernment, understanding, and wisdom in learning. Enable me to complete my assignments and to abound in every good work, for to you I give honor and glory. Amen. Most blessed Lord, send the grace of your Holy Spirit on me to strengthen me, that I may learn well the subject I am about to study, and by it become a better person, for your glory, the comfort of my family, and the benefit of your church and our nation. Amen. Beautiful, beautiful. So could everybody get out your outline for me? I suppose I should have been doing that earlier. And I'm going to come around and I'm just going to take a glance at it.
Also, I was going to plan to actually write the paper, but I talked to my mom about it. She said it might be a little bit too much work for you, so I held off on writing the paper for now.
Oh, that's okay. Also, I want to remind people what to put in it, and I think we're adding, I can't remember if we're adding something new. I can't remember. I have to look at it. Beautiful, beautiful.
I decided to combine temple designs and temple columns together.
That's totally fine.
Since
And famous
basically-
temples. Beautiful.
Yay.
Perfect.
Perfect.
I didn't remember.
Validation.
I did already write my paper.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine. Go ahead and you can give me your paper if you want to. You can get it out.
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't bring it. Okay, that's fine. Well, then if you hear that I want you to do something, you could change it. But I can't remember if we're adding something. Why did I take my glasses off? There's beautiful. I just want to make sure everybody has something they're writing from.
There's the third paragraph.
Oh, okay.
Page.
No, we're not writing the paper today, but you can give it to me if you did, but I want to make sure I'm not adding something. Beautiful. Yes. Do you have an outline?
I had an outline, but then I left it at the table.
Oh, okay. That happens sometimes. If you need help, you call me though. You have less on that one, but you have at least, well, it'd be nice if we could come up with one more thing to have 4 to 7 points, but maybe you can expand. Temple design and something. Do you know what I mean? Maybe you could expand it. Oh, yeah. It's okay. It's okay if we come out. I'm the one responsible for your source. Beautiful, beautiful. And so if we come up a little short on one of ours, that's kind of on me because I gave you the source. Capitals, designed, well, serious, beautiful. And, excuse me, Christian. Beautiful. Okay. So this next week, is everybody with me? This next week, you're going to write the paper, which should be really easy because you've already done the hard parts. All you got to do is basically turn that into sentences and you're done. Let me see if I was having you add anything. I've kind of changed my plans through this. And so simile and alliteration we were doing, and when was I going to add something? Everybody bear with me, please. I don't know. I brought lots of pictures this time. Okay, I guess you guys are off the hook, so if you did write it, you're lucky or fortunate or blessed. I would like you to put a simile, and I would like you to put alliteration in your paper. So if you've written your paper and you have both of those, yay. And if you wrote your paper but you forgot one of those, you can go back in and put it in. If you haven't written your paper, then write them with these, right? And again, just to reiterate, you guys see how I'm marking them on your paper. Even if you mark it somehow, it just really is easier for me if you'll just put an S where the simile in the margin, and an A or alliterate. I don't care how you abbreviate it, okay, right? Instead of underlining it or bolding it or whatever, I can't. Then I have to find, which one was that? Which one was that? I have to mark them anyway for you. So if you just do that for me, then you save me that. And then I can glance at your paper and say, boom, simile, alliteration, done. Yes?
What if we mark it on the side, but then we also bold it?
Well, There's no reason to, because if you mark that line, I'm gonna be able to find your alliteration or simile. It's also just, so imagine you have 18 of these to read. It's just a little jarring when fonts are different and you know, like it's just a little jarring. But I'm not, again, if you underline it or bold it, I'm not going to make you redo it or anything. I'm not mean, you know. But this helps me because I immediately know you did one of each, right? Because if I just see two things underlined randomly in your paper as my eyes go over it, I'm like, well, are they both similes? Are they both alliteration? Did they forget? And this helps me. Okay, that's it. Are there any questions about that? I mean, that's your writing assignment, which you've kind of already done most of it. And if you have the paper and you want to give it to me, that's fine. But if you would like to, go back over it and proofread it maybe. That might be good. Okay, that is business number 1 out of the way. Business number 2 is the most beautiful buildings maybe ever made in the ancient world, maybe ever. Do you know, there are people who argue that some of the buildings, the one particular one we're going to talk a lot about today, is possibly the most beautiful building ever built. And shoot, I just thought of another picture I wanted to bring. Okay, you guys are experts on this by now. The first question I asked you was, what 3 types of columns, Emma?
Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian.
Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian. And we have lovely pictures. I hope your book had the lovely pictures.
Mine doesn't have
You know what? I have lovely pictures with me. The Doric is very, let me find a picture that is.
I need to get a different book.
That's not the one I wanted.
Ferguson, we saw the pictures and the source for the paragraph.
Oh, that's right. You saw the pictures. The Doric is very plain. The Ionic is curvy. And the Corinthian looks like it has flowers and leaves growing out of it. This is how you can know. I give you the column challenge this week, including on this building in the front, not the side we come in, but you know, the other side of the building, except, you know, don't go walking around there, I guess, because there's heavy traffic on that side. But if you drive around and drive past it, see if you can take a look at columns around town and see what is the predominant one. There are lots of buildings with columns, and they're almost always one of these 3, right? We found out from our reading that the Greeks really liked the Doric and Ionic, and the Corinthian was kind of too foofy for them. It was just too fancy. But the Romans really dig the Corinthian columns with the leaves growing out of them. And you might say, well, what's the point? Columns are just to hold up the roof, right? But Dorothy Mills told us that they do something else. You know, if a column, just a bare column, is just, this is the foundation, is just sticking up, okay? And then here's the roof with all sorts of pictures on it and it doesn't blend in well. It's just suddenly there. But the Doric, you know, they put a little pediment here and it sort of blends it in. The Ionic blends it in even more. And then the Corinthian just looks like the top of the temple is just sprouting out of the columns. And it's because it's visually pleasing to us to not see this sharply running into this. It's very stark. And so we have this pretty visual, think of a word. Like it shifts our eyes from the column to the roof. What were you going to say, Bryn?
Did they ever paint the columns?
Yes, what a good question. We think of the ancient world as being white and gray, don't we? Because all the ancient ruins are just rock. This stuff was painted. As a matter of fact, oh, no, I didn't bring that book. Well, I couldn't remember to bring everything. I will bring it. I will try to bring it next week. I have a book with an artist's rendering of what it might look like painted. It's a good question. How do you think we know that they were painted once upon a time?
You could find like painting flakes, like in
Yeah.
cracks and stuff.
Sometimes they find little flakes of paint, and then they can even know what color it is.
We found some behind the Greek Sphinx's ear.
Oh, did they really? Oh, can you imagine that thing painted? It's kind of horrifying even so, but a painted Sphinx, that scares me a little bit. So before we talk about the rest of these buildings, can somebody remind me where Athens got the money for all of this?
Ooh. I'm Athens. I'm from yeah, the league.
The Delian League.
The Delian League. And what was the money supposed to be for?
The colonies.
Ships.
Yes, for protection, all of the above. For protection from Persia, to protect the islands, to protect the Ionians, the colonies that were over in what's today Turkey in Asia Minor. And so originally, you might remember they kept the money on the island of Delos because Delos was sacred. And then eventually, like, you know what? We're just going to move that money to Athens because most people were giving money instead of ships and men. It's like, we'll just take care of that money. And the guy in charge of Athens at the time was named Pericles. And he had a friend named Phidias. And Phidias was one of the greatest sculptors, artistic designers ever. And so Pericles would commission his friend Phidias to make things and design things to make Athens pretty. And Phidias did it. Yeah, I have a story about that later, but I don't want to go into that yet. So, what is the greatest building on the Athenian Acropolis?
The Parthenon.
The Parthenon. What does the name Parthenon mean? Why is it called the Parthenon? Does anybody know? Kind of a weird, random name. Parthenon. Does anybody remember what goddess it was for? He's going to have a fit if I don't let him. It's okay. What goddess? Athena. It was for the goddess Athena. And Athena was sometimes called Athena Parthenos. Or just Parthenos. Parthenos means like an unmarried lady. An unmarried lady. Parthenos. What?
That's hard.
Yes, but Athena too. Well, Athena too.
Oh.
Because Athena also has no husband. And so she's she's the Parthenos, and so they named it after Athena Parthenon. All these gods have many names. Like, I don't mean to be sacrilegious, but are you familiar? The real God has many names. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes, like God of hosts. In the Old Testament, sometimes it's called Adonai, El Shaddai. There are multiple names of God. Of course, we can't ever know God like the way he is in all his godness, if you know what I mean, because we're not God. But we have names. And so in the Old Testament, they would give him names like sometimes they call him Jehovah Jireh means, it's easy, it's kind of fun to say, it means the God who provides. So they would name him things like that. And the Greeks did that too. They had names, so if Athena is being this job, they call her this. If she's being that job, they call her that. Okay, so what's so awesome about the Parthenon? Let's look at some pictures. First of all, it's not so awesome today.
Let's see if this is.
This is what it looks like today. Now, please ignore all the metal scaffolding. When I was there, this is the first thing you see when you come up on the Parthenon. This is the front of the Acropolis, or the Parthenon. But they were working on it when I was there. And I've talked to people since then, and they're like, they're always working on it. So there's always some sort of scaffolding somewhere. I have other pictures, but I just wanted the front of it even with the scaffolding. And so even the way it is now, it's pretty doggone attractive. But this is a good time to maybe talk about that last question. Well, why is it in such bad shape? Well, actually, we have other buildings that are that old and they're in pretty good shape. There's a particular reason this one. Yeah, Bryn, do you remember?
Store powder in it?
They stored gunpowder in it during a war between the Turks and the Venetians.
Yeah.
And unbelievably, to me, at least, they were targeting it when they found out there was gunpowder in it. And they tried, and then finally they hit it, and it just blew it to smithereens. It's amazing that so much of it still is okay. It's just tragic. And one of the pictures I forgot to bring was, and I'll try to bring this next week too. There is another temple in Athens, and it's almost intact. It's not on the Acropolis, it's in the Agora. It's a temple of Hephaestus. And it's the best preserved temple in all of Greece. A lot of them are kind of falling apart even without the gunpowder problem. But this one isn't. It's got its roof and everything. I'll show you some other pictures of what it looks like now. This is what it looks like now, but once upon a time, and some of you I know have been to this place, it looked a bit more like this. This is the Parthenon in Nashville, Tennessee. If you are ever traveling, if your family is traveling to Nashville, and I believe the Hunts, you're the ones who put me on to this originally, I think, several years ago. And then my husband and I went down and saw it. They have a reproduction, a full-size reproduction of the Parthenon. So this is a little more, gives you an idea of the beauty, although they don't even have the things painted. Dorothy Mills went into great detail telling you about the pictures that are carved into the top. We have, in one end, we have the contest between Athena and Poseidon for who's going to be the god of Athens. Around the edges, they have carvings that are the annual procession. The people would have a big parade up to the Acropolis and give offerings to Athena. The main attraction inside the Parthenon was a 40-foot tall statue of Athena. And it is in Nashville if you go. There's a 40, this is what it looks like. It is, I've got pictures, but I didn't bring them of, me standing next to it. It's 40 feet, it's very, very large. And you can walk around it and see the back. And she's got this shield, and she's holding a figure of victory, the winged Nike. We'll talk more about it in a minute.
We were just talking about this in the book.
Yes.
Okay.
The gold on Athena was removable. I know. So they in case they needed it, they could take the gold off and melt it down, but they had to promise to restore it. So in the not so good times in Greece that we're going to be talking about between now and Thanksgiving, they needed it. They started taking gold off Athena, and they considered taking more. But it's beautiful. You might say, because the statue's gone, obviously, the real, there's no statue, there's nothing inside. Eventually all the gold, everything precious was removed, and what was underneath has just been disassembled and it's gone. So we might say, well, how do we know? How do we know what it looked like? Well, fortunately, what?
Poems?
Now, poems would be good, but poems aren't specific enough to really reconstruct exactly. They do talk about her shield and the Nike and everything, but what we do have, and this is in a museum in Athens, we have a much smaller, this is only, 3 feet tall, 3 or 4 feet tall, and it is a replica of the statue of Athena made before the statue of Athena disappeared. An artist made a replica, and we have the replica And so they can reconstruct it based on the replica. And this is from Roman times. This is from like 200 AD. But the statue was still there. You could still visit it. And before it disappeared, we're so grateful somebody decided, I'm going to make a copy of that. I'm going to make a little portable statue. And so now we know what it looks like. Somebody had, did somebody have a question? Oh, yes.
How they found it?
I don't know.
That
I
would be
don't.
interesting to know, like if it was in someone's house or just temple.
I don't know. I bet there is an interesting story behind that, and I do not know the story. Okay, let me lay things down that I've used. Is there any other? Okay, so before we move on, the interesting thing about the Parthenon, well, I'm not even going to try to draw this. Well, okay, let's look at the. Here's the interesting thing about the Parthenon. It has very long sides with lots of columns. And have you ever done one of those optical illusion things where, for example, I should find one and bring it. They'll have two lines. Oh, they'll have two lines. These lines are parallel, please, but I know they're probably not, but pretend these lines are parallel. And then they'll do something like, put lines inside, and then they'll put lines going another way. And anyway, it's not going to work here because I'm not doing it exactly enough and straight, but it makes it look like the lines aren't parallel. Have you ever seen optical illusions like that? Where they'll tell you, for example, they'll tell you this circle is round, but then if they put things next to it or around it, it doesn't look round anymore. You know what I mean? You have to trust me on this one, I guess. The problem with the Parthenon is if you have a straight line and you have lots of other lines, it makes the line not look straight anymore. So in a building like the Parthenon, and you have all these columns, it makes the side look a little bowed out. It's an optical illusion. It's really not, but it makes it look that way. Guys, these guys were brilliant. They knew all of this, of course. So they made the sides of the Parthenon curve in a little bit the other way to offset the optical illusion so it will look straight. The sides of the Parthenon are not exactly straight, but they look straight because of the columns. They actually counteracted the optical illusion that was going to be created. Amazing, amazing. The Parthenon is not the only building on the Acropolis. And does everybody understand what I mean by Acropolis? The book that I forgot to bring, after you guys leave, I'm going to find it somewhere. An Acropolis is a place with very steep sides on all sides, but the top is flat. So it's usually a good place for defense, right? And a lot of Greek cities, because Greece is very mountainy, they have places like this. And so that was probably the oldest part of the city, right? If I move to a city, if I'm starting a new city, where do I want to live? The place where nobody can get me, right? I can fling stuff down on their heads if they try to climb up there. And then later, when they started building houses all down below, that became the holy place. So when you climb up there, the first thing you go through is called the propylaea. And it's sort of the entranceway. The propylaea is not in very good shape. It actually never got finished because the bad things that are going to happen that we're going to read about soon put it into the building project. You go through the propylaea, and then you see the Parthenon. But off to your right, when you're climbing up, they would have these parades, right? And they'd have a procession and a ramp that went up. Today, it's lots of stairs that zigzag. You just have to go up a lot of stairs to get there. You go through the propylaea, and you see the Parthenon, but you also see this cute little temple. Here, I have a couple of pictures of it. This cute little temple. It's bricked in because they don't it strengthens it, and you're not allowed to go in it anyway. This is what it looks like from the side while you're climbing the aforesaid steep, and this is part of the propylaea. It's the little temple to Nike. Yes, it's the temple of victory. Nike, the goddess of victory. And by the way, yes, that's why they call the sporting goods Nike, because it makes you victorious if you wear their stuff, except maybe it doesn't. But I feel like it takes more than just good shoes to be. But good shoes help. Anyway, this is the temple they built after the war with the Persians, saying, we are victorious, right? Nike helped us. And it looks out, if you were standing here and standing next to this temple and looking out, you would be looking towards the sea, towards where the Battle of Salamis was. It faces towards the battle. So this is a cute, in pretty good shape, little temple to Nike. But if you climb up past Nike and you go past the Parthenon, over here is this crazy, weird temple, and it's got twists and turns. It's got different chambers. It's called the Erechtheum. It's to several different gods. Its claim to fame is, I didn't bring, see, when I want to bring too much stuff. Okay, there was a picture in your book of this. This is the Erechtheum, what it looks like today. But over to the side, there are these columns that look like ladies. You know, have you seen the columns that look like ladies? You know what, I'm just gonna pass this around. Just look at it and pass it around till it gets around to Christian. And it's over here is what I'm pointing out. These are the columns that look like ladies. I'm sorry, I didn't bring the good picture of those. They're called, does anybody remember what they're called? Dorothy Mills told us. They have a weird name. Oh my gosh, I'm just forgetting the questions. What is a caryatid? What I just told you. Yes, Amelia, fill us in.
When the figure of a woman is used for like a column.
Yes, they're figures of women, and so this whole side of the Erechtheum, here's the Parthenon, here's the Erechtheum, and it's the side that faces the Parthenon, has these women. Well, all my life, I saw pictures of this in books. I was like, okay, it's the awesome temple with the column ladies. Great. And so I went to the Acropolis, like, oh, awesome. There's the temple with the column ladies. But then the next day, I went to a museum that's down at the base of the Acropolis. It's the Acropolis Museum. It's everything they've dug up on the Acropolis. Like, only stuff from the Acropolis is in the Acropolis Museum. And I'll be doggone if I didn't go in there and found these ladies in the museum. The ladies up on the Acropolis aren't the original ladies. They replaced them. What? And my mind just, what? I've been seeing those pictures my whole life, and that's not the real ones? They're in the museum down below because they don't want them to get broken or anything. So here, I'll pass this around too, so you can see it up close. So those are the caryatids. Those are the ancient ones. Those are from the time of Pericles. Now, let's go back to Pericles for a minute. I need to go back to that statue of Athena. Let's bring the statue of Athena back out while we talk about her.
Athena.
Phidias, Pericles' best bud and great sculptor, who designed Athena, decided that on the shield, he's just going to put his name and Pericles' name on the shield. Because they, like, were paying for it and making it. Okay, this is a big, bad no-no.
Yeah.
You don't put your face or name or whatever on the gods. And they found out about it, and they fined him. I mean, they put Phidias on trial for doing this. They also accused him of stealing some of the gold. And there were some people who didn't like Pericles very much. And so they knew, Pericles said, hey, buddy, they're going to come after you because they don't like me, and they're going to accuse you of stealing. So here's what you should do. Weigh all the gold you use. Weigh it all. And then when they accuse you, you can prove it. And they had to, actually. They said, hey, dude, I think you took some of the gold. I was like, oh. Well, take the removable gold off of Athena and weigh it, and you tell me. And they did. And he did not steal any gold. Anyway, this statue got Phidias in some trouble. He could have replaced some of it. Well, the thing is, I don't know if they weighed it or they did the mass, but there was a way to tell that he didn't mix any other metals in with it.
How he just took some of the gold and then made the number up.
No, it was documented how much. There were witnesses before he used it. So anyway, the Erechtheum is the other major temple that you can still see. There's a lot of rubble up there because, gunpowder and things exploded. Lots of, I've got it on it's the screensaver. When I turn off the video, if you want to for a minute, my screensaver is me and my son standing next to the side of the Parthenon, and you can see the rubble everywhere. There's just a lot of big blocks of buildings that aren't there anymore, or roof pieces that blew off the Parthenon. So let's bring this one. All of these lovely statues and the carvings around the edge, after the explosion, bits of them were laying around. Some of them were still on the building, some were just not anymore. And they were obviously not going to last very much longer. So there was a British nobleman named Lord Elgin, and he took them. And he took them to London. They're in the British Museum. This is a big deal now because Greece has been asking the British to give them back. But the British like them. They don't want to give them back. So the Acropolis Museum actually has places, empty places ready to put them when they finally negotiate with England to get them back. There are several copies of this. It's called a frieze. It's not spelled like you freeze the ice cream. It's spelled like this. And it's pictures around the edge of something, a frieze. And this frieze, these pictures of the parade for Athena, they made some copies of them. There are only, I think, 3 copies in the world. One of them is in Champaign at the University of Illinois. It's called the Spurlock. Back when I was there, it was, oh, do you know that window is broken, isn't it? Is that a broken spot? That dark spot, or is there something hanging there? Oh, okay. It just looks like, it wouldn't be dark. That's right. It's like, what is that? It just sounded very loud, didn't it?
Yeah.
Like something was open. It was called the World Heritage Museum, but then after I left there, they made a whole new museum. It's called the Spurlock Museum, and they've got the frieze. We've got one of the copies, one of the few copies in the world. So if you're passing through Champaign, if you're driving somewhere south in Illinois and you want to stop by Champaign, look up the Spurlock Museum and find their hours, and it's cool. They've got some really cool stuff, and that's one of them. But yeah, it's not friendly between Greece and England because England won't give. England has stuff from other countries too. Actually, one of those we're also going to talk about today.
Egypt?
Egypt, indeed. It's kind of a joke, an international joke, that the British have stolen the world's stuff and don't like to give it back. But you know what? I wouldn't want to either if I had that. Like I said, there were many other buildings built in Athens at that time. Phidias also, that sculptor we were talking about, made the statue of Zeus at Olympia, where the Olympic Games were. And it was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Temple of Zeus at Olympia, with that statue. That is also, completely gone. I don't, usually gold, silver. I don't know what the underlying part was made of. That is also a very good question. I don't think so. It wasn't carved. I think it was constructed, you know. I'm not sure that it was carved because it was very, very large. I think the parts were constructed. That's a good question, and I don't know the answer. Yes. Is it what?
Is it one of the wonders of the ancient world?
No. No. The only one that's left is the pyramids. The other 6 are gone, and I tried to list them, but I always leave one out. And I never remember to look it up. Here, we've got time. Let's just, so pyramids, if I don't write them down, I'll forget which ones I said. Temple of Zeus at Olympia. Does anybody know another one?
Alexander the Watchtower.
The Pharos of Alexandria. It's a lighthouse. Yes. Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Hanging Gardens. Anybody got another one? We're up to 4.
There's a CC song that lists them all.
I know 2 more. What?
Temple of Croesus?
No? You mean series?
A series. Yeah.
The Temple of Diana, Temple of Artemis at Ephesus. There was a riot there. It's mentioned in Acts. The Colossus of Rhodes. It's a huge bronze statue that was on the island of Rhodes. And like 10 years ago, somebody was diving in the Mediterranean. They found a huge body part, I don't know, a hand or a foot or something. And they were thinking, oh my gosh, I think it's part of the Colossus of Rhodes. And then they brought it up and tested it. And then they're like, no, I don't think it is, which I was crushed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Why can't I ever remember the 7th?
Lighthouse.
That's the Pharos of Alexandria. Why can I never remember? Apparently it's just not very memorable. Mausoleum of Halicarnassus. See, that's okay. This was King Mausolus lived in Halicarnassus, which is sort of southern coast of what's today Turkey, Asia Minor, and he just built this big tomb for himself. And so it's funny because now we call all of these a mausoleum, but that was actually his name, and then it was his burial place, and now we call all of them mausoleums. His name went down in history. Unfortunately, his name is the name of a place where you put dead people. It's maybe not the thing you want. Thank you. That was driving me bananas, but I kept forgetting to look it up. So those are the 7. I don't know what the criterion is for becoming one of the 7 wonders, because the Parthenon is certainly beautiful. There were other amazing things, but these are considered the 7. The 7. They are the 7. So I also, can we just digress just slightly? I wanted to bring these in earlier and I didn't. These are Greek pots. These are pictures. These are actual, no, I did not take these pictures. I got these off the internet. They are, can anybody tell what they are? This is a guy tied to a mast with nasty things. And this is, what do you think this is? Odysseus. It's Odysseus. Here, you want to pass it around so you can see it? Leave it there for Emma because she will like to see that. And maybe I'll start the other one the other way. Can anybody tell what might be going on in this picture?
People trying to catch a fish.
Here, I'm gonna let you look. The large fish is not related to the picture necessarily, except it does involve a sea voyage. All right, I'm just gonna shut up and let you guys see if you can figure out what's going on. Yeah. Okay. Pass it on. Pass it on.
I bet the guy's eating a sandwich to like.
I'm gonna write the reading for next week on the board.
Wait,
That's what I
but like, seriously, it looks like he has a straw.
He's just drinking.
Wait, the guy's grabbing leg. He's grabbing leg.
Oh yeah, he has legs.
He has legs in his head.
Okay. This is very hilarious.
I thought you guys would get it right away. It is kind of hard to tell if you don't know. It's not.
Wait, that guy made a person scribble it.
Okay, go.
Wait, don't tell us.
No, I won't kill you.
You're not gonna tell us.
I'm going to tell you eventually. While you wait,
Wait, no, I know it. It's some other sacrifices.
why don't we say two things? First of all, three things. Be quiet and listen to me. Second of all, if you figure out what you think it is, keep it to yourself until it's been around the whole room. C, this is what I would like you to read for next time, all right? It's chapter 16. It's called The Downfall of Athens. That's not very cheerful, is it? And we're only reading parts 1 and 2. We're going to spend 2 weeks on this chapter because it's a very, very long chapter. And I've been warning you that something bad is on the horizon. And we already noticed that I just really, really feel like everything seems really loud today through those. No, we're not. We're busy. Sparta, we read this story last week. Go ahead and send it. Get it around so everybody can look, because I would like to move on to our cat of Bubastes. Sparta, do you remember the story last week where Sparta sent to Athens and said, hey, why are you building walls? You don't need walls. And then Themistocles said, oh, I don't know. Let's talk about that. And then he stalled for time until they finished their walls. And so we already know that Sparta is not a fan of Athens. When Athens started taking money and building all of this stuff, they were less of a fan. And it's certainly, we're passing around some pottery, and that one's pretty obvious what it is.
Oh yeah,
But another one is coming around, so you can pass that the other way. Another one's coming around that everybody's trying to figure out what it is. But if you know, don't say. Just look at it and think. I'm sorry, what was I saying? Sparta was the walls, and Themistocles stalled. And so Sparta started listening to all of the Athenian allies who said, we wanted to leave the league, and Athens came and beat us up. They're like, oh, that's terrible. Athens is evil and wicked. And things started spiraling out of control. All right, while the pictures finish going around, I have some, oh no, I lost my little spot. We have columns. Ionic columns are topped with scrolls. Doric columns are flat. Corinthian columns are much more ornate. And now you'll know all about that. I don't know what the other one was I was going to read. Oh, I'm going to skip that one. All right, just a second. I'm sure I can figure it out. I don't remember. Oh, the Parthenon. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. I will read about the Parthenon, and then, okay, here we go. They chipped at the marble, they did it by hand. The work they created was brilliant and grand. With glorious columns, carved horses and men, goddesses, chariots, battles, and then they put them together on top of a hill. The Parthenon temple stood proudly and still. You can see it today, many centuries later. Some say there has never been anything greater. All right. What's going on in this picture? What's the vote?
I think it might be some Bible story, but I just
Oh, it is not. Kristen.
of course.
Human sacrifice.
Okay, I'm going to tell you slowly. Grace noticed that there is something that's going along here. They have a long pole, and they're sticking it in the general direction of the upper part of someone's face.
Oh, yeah.
What's happening here? Who stuck a big pole in someone's face? Oh, no, it's not the merry-go-round of death, but how lovely that you remember that. Olivia and Emma were in a play where they did this.
It's all the Odyssey, isn't it?
It is the Odyssey. It is the blinding of the Cyclops.
That did not look like a Cyclops.
No.
I wondered what the guy with the huge
Also,
leg was.
because it looks like he has an eye on this side, but they're poking it somewhere else.
You guys
you know what? I can't make a pot and paint it, so I'm going to cut the artist a lot of slack about the, sideways view of the Cyclops. But anyway, I just wanted to bring in a couple of examples. There's lots of Odyssey art and Iliad art. Yes.
What about the snake and the fish from the top and bottom?
I don't know about the snake and the fish. Maybe the artist said, oh, I have some space left on this plate. Wouldn't a snake and a fish look awesome? I don't know. Okay. So far, you guys have 2 assignments. Write your paper and read this. The third thing we're going to talk about is the Cat of Bubastes and more as well. For next week, I would like you to read, can I just call it COB, the Cat of Bubastes? Chapters 6 through 10, the next 5 chapters. And in this book, we went to Egypt. And I want to talk a little bit about Egypt over the next few weeks. We're going to talk about the book itself, but to make sure I get through what I want to talk about, I want to do this first, and then we'll talk about Amuba and Jethro and their woes. Amuba. Egypt is a major civilization of the ancient world. But I'm not really talking about Egypt. We're talking about Greece and Rome in this class. Does anybody know why we're just sort of we're leaving Egypt out and we're not talking tons about Egypt as much as we are about Greece and Rome? What's different about Greece and Rome than Egypt for us?
Climate.
What?
Climate.
Well, climate, maybe. It is different. It's very dry. They live in the desert. Why would modern Americans or modern Europeans care more about Greece and Rome than they might about Egypt?
Because we know more about them and more about their lifestyles in Egypt.
We certainly know a lot. We know more than we used to. We know more than we used to about Egypt, and I'm going to tell the story of that. This is very true. But
Never mind.
no, Emma, that's not a bad answer. What are some things? You know what? I don't think I can ask this question until we're done with this year. Greece and Rome give us a lot of things that we still have today. I already told you you could drive around town and see columns. Our government system comes from Rome, largely. Democracy, the first place there was a democracy was Athens. What did we get from Egypt? This is kind of a trick question. Nothing really. I mean, cool stuff to look at. But we don't use their government system. We don't study their literature. They do have stories. They do have literature. But we don't really we don't really study them and celebrate them and rewrite them the way we do what we get from Greece and Rome. But they were there for thousands of years. And it comes up in the Bible a lot, right? Obviously the Israelites went down to Egypt. But there were numerous trips. Remember Abraham and Sarah went down to Egypt, and Abraham said, lie, or at least fudge the truth a little bit and tell them you're my sister, not my wife, because you're beautiful, and they'll take you and they'll beat me up. And so we have lots of dealings with Egypt, but in the Bible, but we don't really inherit anything from Egypt. But they're cool. So Emma said, we know more about Greece and Rome, which I think is probably true even today. But for a long time, we knew zip about Egypt. And this was the reason we could not read their writing. What do we call Egyptian writing? Hieroglyphics. And so they're pictures, right? They're little pictures. Now, Bryn and Ann, this is going to be we've talked about this before, but this will be a review for you. The pictures, sometimes the pictures stood for a sound. Sometimes they stood for a thing. So for example, what do I mean? This, what does this mean? It just makes the sound buh. It doesn't mean anything, right? But what if I had this? This is not a hieroglyphic. I'm making this up. Okay, so on the one hand, it makes a k or a s sound. But what if I pretended, oh, it looks like arms? So I'm going to say this means hug. It means k, but it also means hug, I decided. And so sometimes I might write this and I mean k or s. Sometimes I might write it and I mean hug. And you just kind of use the context. Hieroglyphics were a bit like that. Sometimes they meant a sound, sometimes they meant a thing. But for a long time, people had known that there were temples in Egypt covered with these weird pictures forever. But they forgot how to read the funny pictures. And so, and if you've seen pictures, right, of Egypt, like walls covered in hieroglyphics, and they couldn't read any of them. But Napoleon, when he was trying to take over the world, one of those places was Egypt, and he went to Egypt, and he had a team of archaeologists with him. And he said, if you find anything cool, bring it to me. They found something cool. Do you know what they found? They found a tablet. It looks a bit like this. This is, I think, half size, what it really is. This is the other thing that's in the British Museum that they're also not giving back.
Yeah, the actual thing.
Yeah, the actual thing. It's called the Rosetta Stone because it was found near the town of Rosetta. And the wonderful thing about the Rosetta Stone was this. It has 3 different groups of writing. The top is hieroglyphics. The bottom is Greek. And the middle is something called demotic. Demotic is like shorthand hieroglyphics. It's a later Egyptian language that, because this takes a long time, drawing little pictures, and so it was kind of a shorthand. And the cool thing about the Rosetta Stone was, we couldn't read this, we really couldn't read this, but we knew the Greek. And so pretty quickly, scholars said, you know what I think this is? It's some sort of official monument where they said the same thing in 3 different languages. And if we know one of them, maybe we can figure out the other one. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever done cryptograms. They're puzzles where it's just a bunch of symbols or the letters all stand for different letters, and you kind of have to work it out. So it's like Wheel of Fortune-y, so you'll have, these 3 symbols, and then later on the doc you have these 3 symbols, and these 3 symbols always seem to come together. And so you ask yourself, what's a common 3-letter word that we use over and over and over again? Well, those aren't 3-letter words. The. And so you could take a bet that every time you see this, it's the word the, which means this is a T, this is an H, and this is an E. And then if you find those in other words, you can start filling in the letters. Right? And some people like to play games like this. My husband likes these. And so it was a little bit like that. But nobody could crack it. It was just so hard. And scholar after scholar worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. They just couldn't figure it out. Until eventually a French guy was working on this. His name was Jean-Francois Champollion. If you have children someday, you can think about the name Jean-Francois Champollion.
No.
Whatever, Franich. And he noticed something. And I'm not gonna try to pass this around. But when we're done with class, if you want to come look at it, but I don't want to break it. Okay, so we're not gonna lift it. No. But this was a Christmas gift. This is a really nice replica my son gave me for Christmas. He noticed that in the hieroglyphics, there were places where there were a bunch of symbols enclosed in an oval that looked like this. By the way, hieroglyphics are interesting. You can write them this direction. You can write them this direction. You can write them this direction. I don't know if they wrote them backwards that way. So sometimes these were laying down. Sometimes if they're writing up and down, you'll see it like this. And these are hieroglyphics. Okay. And he found them in several places, and nobody knew what they were. And then he was looking at the Greek, and he realized that same number of times they mentioned the names of pharaohs. And Champollion got a brainstorm. He said, what if this thing encloses the name of a king or a queen? What if? And so he took the symbols inside, it's called a cartouche, the little circle. He took the symbols inside the cartouche and he started matching them up to the names of the pharaohs in the Greek, and he broke the code. He broke the code. He spent like 20 years studying hieroglyphics, like full time. Remember this, if you're working on something hard and you're just not getting success right away, I always think of Mr. Champollion, Monsieur Champollion, who didn't give up, and he finally cracked the code, and he opened it up. People were able to go into those temples and read what was on the walls. So a few weeks ago, I told you a crazy story about the two brothers who snuck into the tomb and they were stealing stuff, and one of them got caught in a trap and his brother cut his head off and everything. That's one of the things we could read in the hieroglyphics.
Could we read it though?
Yeah.
We want to.
Oh, yes, well. And so he cracked the code for us and he opened Egypt up. And this wasn't until like after the year 1800. It wasn't very long ago. And for, 1,500, 2,000 years, we didn't know how to read them. And then suddenly, we can read the names of the pharaohs and which mummy is which and all the stories on the tombs. We don't have, a lot of the stuff they left behind is on stone. But somebody, who said the climate? Who mentioned the climate earlier? Luke. An interesting thing about Egypt is it is very, very dry. And do you guys know what happens to bodies and paper and things like that when it's very, very dry? It lasts a really long time. And so they would find papyrus. Now, papyrus is a plant. I brought a picture. They used to have papyrus at the Botanical Center. They had a papyrus plant. I'm not sure if they still do. It looks like this. And it grows along the banks of the Nile. And you go out and you cut the papyrus plant. And then can you guys see that the stem is sort of triangle shaped? They've cut the stem up into bits. And then you slice it and you unfold it. So I cut this little bit. This is a cross section of the papyrus stem, and I cut it here, and then I fold it down. I fold the sides down and make it flat, right? And so I have this strip, and then I put a bunch of strips of it like this, and then I put a bunch of strips of it like this, and then I put a bunch more strips of it like this, and I affix it. I'm not sure what they used to affix them. I think that if you wet it down, it will just, I bet this book tells me. Strips of pith, that's the inside of the stem, were arranged in 2 layers, one set horizontal, next vertical, on top of each other. They were covered with linen, and heavy pressure was applied with stones or a mallet. The strips would weld together in their own sap. And they made papyrus. From the plant, they call the thing they made papyrus. We don't use papyrus anymore, but we use the name, because what do we call this? Paper. It's not papyrus anymore, but we still call it paper. So we do find papyrus, but they got to be really careful, because you dig it up, and then if you take it somewhere that's not dry, it'll start just disintegrating. When they dig up mummies or papyrus or anything, or clothing, because this will rot too, right, when it gets damp, they have to be super careful. Keep it in a special environment with not too much moisture, and it'll just start crumbling. I don't know that anybody uses papyrus today because paper is so readily available and cheap. However, I have for everybody a piece of papyrus. I know, it's so fun. So it's papyrus, and you can see the strips. Hold up to, when you get it, hold up to the light, and you can see the strips. So everybody gets a piece of papyrus, and I also have a hieroglyphic key. What? You can write anything, you could do anything you want to with this. You can cut it into strips and make bookmarks. You can use this key to try to write your name. Remember, the key is the sound. It's the sound it makes, not the letter. So, for example, if I wrote, here's my name. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 letters, but I don't have 8 sounds. I, sh, o. I only have 5 sounds. Do you see what I mean? So, j, u, l, see, e, a. I suppose you do. K, I, sh, Christian. You got to use every sound. G-er-ace. You only have 4 sounds. But you have 5 letters. Do you get the idea? Again, it's phonetic. It's a phonetic language. So we only, just like alliteration, we don't care what the letter is, we care about the sound. In this case, you don't care what the letter is, you care what the sound is. So you have to kind of listen to your name. So like Anna only has 3 sounds. A, n, a. And the fact that you have 2 n's is irrelevant for hieroglyphics. So you can use this. So here, there's 3 of these for you ladies. I'll hand these out first because everybody's going to get excited when they get the papyrus. And okay, I'm going to give you 4. Oh, is there more than 3?
Oh, thank you for
Okay.
4 of them.
All right. There's 2 for you. And okay, I brought an extra. I don't know why.
Okay, not that weird.
We're not missing somebody, are we?
Still a bunch of birds.
Okay. And then, like I said, this is yours. You can use, pen works. Pencil doesn't work very well. Marker, felt tip marker, of course you can't, once you do it, it's done, right? But I don't care what you do with these. You can, frame it, and I don't care. You can write all over it. You can write hieroglyphics on it. You can, whatever you want. It is your papyrus for your, Amazon.
Oh, okay.
You can order packages of papyrus. Okay,
But it was expensive.
I don't think it was. Yeah, my husband, it was, you can thank my husband for this. And then there should be 3. I brought an extra one. Are we missing someone?
Olivia.
Oh, Olivia. I'll hang on to everything. I'll just hang on to all of Olivia's stuff. Anyway. So yes, if you just are in love with the papyrus, just look on Amazon and look up papyrus. I believe I have a poem about papyrus and Champollion. Nope, it's the Egypt one. Okay, are we ready? And then we're going to talk about amoeba and Jethro. You can use it as a fuel. You could put it in your soup. You could weave it into sandals or a lovely chicken coop. You could make it into boxes. You could twist it into twine. The plant they called papyrus was so versatile and fine. You could make it into sailboats. You could braid it into cloth. And you never had to worry about damage by a moth. But the best thing about papyrus, as you'll all agree, I think, you could use it just like paper. All you needed was the ink. You flattened out the stems, laid them all out side by side, then then another layer of papyrus was applied. Sprinkle water from the Nile, add some nice papyrus juice to keep it stuck together so that nothing could come loose. Writing on papyrus was much easier than clay, and the only thing you had to do was know just what to say. All right, and the Rosetta Stone. For many years through history, Egypt was a mystery because nobody could read specifics of ancient Egypt's hieroglyphics. Then Jean-Francois Champollion asked soldiers of Napoleon to let him study what they'd found, a big rock lying on the ground. Marked in Greek and hieroglyphic, it turned out to be terrific. It gave Champollion the key to unlock all that mystery. Named for the place where it was found, the Rosetta Stone is world-renowned. No. Now, we are going to talk about, for the rest of our time, these poor guys that have been captured by the enemy and taken away. Amuba's dad is dead. His mom is dead.
Everyone's dead.
Everyone's dead, and he has run away. Does life seem bad for them in Egypt? Why is life pretty good for them? Because their master, Amaris, right? I think the priest, he's a priest, and he's a really nice guy who has 2 kids who are really nice kids. Chebron, who's Amuba's, new best friend, or Amuba is Chebron's new best friend, and I don't remember the girl's name, Misa, who is attached to Jethro, and he goes and feeds all their animals out in their backyard where they have a little miniature zoo. Yes.
Are all those animals used for sacrifice?
No. As a matter of fact, I wonder if I can find that place. We only read through the first 5 chapters. So let me find, the end of chapter 5. I want to read something on that. That chapter 5 is when they decided to go traveling. I wanted to read the place where they actually went into the backyard. If anybody remembers where that was, maybe the second, was it that?
In like the beginning of the second book. I don't think so. I think it was the beginning of
Okay. Thank you for bearing with me. Here she's giving him instructions about how to feed them, but it's before that. I can't find it, but I feel like it's on one of these 2 pages. What chapter do you think it's in?
the end of the beginning of chapter 2.
The beginning of chapter 2. Okay.
On page 50, I think. Around that page.
Well, that's actually that was the page I was looking at just now. Thank you, though. But I'm going to look at, no, chapter 2, they're still fighting the war. They're not even in Egypt yet. Okay, I'm sorry, I can't find it. But the thing I'm trying to remember is that when they went out into the backyard, Amuba and Jethro noted that they had, they treated the animals with particular, I want to say deference. It's like they treated them as special creatures and sort of bowed down to them. I found it. They're going around looking at all the animals. It says, Amuba noticed that their 2 guides, the brother and sister, made a motion of respect as they entered the house where the cats were, as well as towards the dogs, the ichneumon, and the crocodile, all of which were sacred animals in Thebes. An ichneumon is a what is an ichneumon? It's what Rikki Tikki Tavi is. It's a mongoose. Thank you. They fight snakes. If you've never read Rikki Tikki Tavi, you might not know, but if you've read Rikki Tikki Tavi, it's about a mongoose fighting a couple of big snakes. And that's what an ichneumon is. It's a mongoose. And so they bowed down to them because it said they were sacred animals. So they wouldn't sacrifice them, right? Because they were sacred. I don't think, I'm trying to remember everything I've ever read about Egypt. I don't think they sacrificed animals because so many of their animals were sacred. And here's the problem, and you will read about this in this book. Egypt is very long. I mean, Egypt is wider than the Nile, but almost everybody lives by the Nile in Egypt. Does anybody know why everybody almost always lives by the Nile? What do you say, Bryn? And what do they need for the crops? Water and flood. You guys might know that the Nile has a weird habit. It floods its banks. You know what it doesn't anymore? Apparently they've put up levees and things, and because the people who live by it don't really want to be flooded out every year. But once upon a time, it flooded massively its banks once a year. And when it did, it's sort of like, imagine when the Mississippi floods. Have you been down to the riverfront after it goes down? And what's it look like?
There's a lot of dirt.
There's a lot of dirt everywhere because the Mississippi, the muddy Mississippi, it's got stuff like dirt floating in it. And then the water carries the dirt out, and then when the water goes back down, it leaves the dirt behind. Well, the Nile did the same thing. It brought the dirt, and then it left it and went back in. But the dirt was awesome dirt. Super duper A1, 100% awesome dirt. And so it made the Nile area very fertile. They could really grow things. Also, they would dig little canals off the Nile for irrigation. It would give them water. So everybody kind of lives there. So you've got this kind of a long country, even though it's got desert on both sides. And the people who lived in one part didn't necessarily think the same animals were sacred. But, we don't want to offend the people who live north of us or south of us, so we just don't sacrifice any of them, right? Because somebody somewhere in Egypt probably thinks that animal is sacred. We'll talk a bit next week about some of these gods of theirs. You might know some of their gods look a little animal-y. I'll bring in some pictures next week. So what did we learn what sort of gods Amuba and Jethro, what did their people worship? Did we learn anything about that?
They worship the sun.
They worshiped the sun. And at the beginning, when the Egyptians were attacking, Amuba said, why do they worship all those weird animals? Why don't they just worship the sun like normal people? Normal people worship the sun. The Persians, the Assyrians, all the good people worship the sun. There's all these animals. And they didn't have an answer for that. It's like, oh, different people do different things, don't they? I guess. I wanted to read something. Amuba? Oh, could you guys tell me why? Does anybody in Egypt, at first, when they went to Egypt, did anybody know that Amuba was the prince? He was royalty. Why didn't he want to tell everyone?
That he'd get killed.
Yeah. If they find out that your dad was the king they just conquered, they might kill you. After we met the Egyptians, do you think they would have done that? It sounds like they didn't do that sort of thing to their captives. But Amaris, the priest, said there was another good reason not to tell, and it was, if the Pharaoh finds out that you're the prince, he'll take you to be one of his personal slaves, which I guess is awesome because you live in the palace. But he said, you know what, it's probably a better, quieter life in my house than living in the palace, and I will treat you very well. So let's just not tell people that you're the prince. But we was getting ready to be marched to Egypt, and his mother had left a message for him. You will doubtless, my son, be carried away captive into Egypt. But you may yet escape someday and rejoin your people, or may meet with some lot in which you may find contentment or even happiness there. At any rate, my last words to you are, bear patiently whatever may befall you. Remember always that your father was king of the Rebu, and whatever your station in life may be, try to be worthy of the rank to which you were born. There is no greater happiness on a throne than in a cottage. Men make their own happiness, and a man may be respected even though only a slave. What do you think she means? Men make their own happiness. You're not happier on a throne necessarily than you are in a cottage. How do men make their own happiness?
By working.
And how would that make your happiness, Luke?
Make you feel good.
Okay, so not every job makes you feel good. Is this true?
Yeah.
But do we all know that there are some things that when you're doing it, you feel like, oh, like I really enjoy doing this. This is a good, maybe we might call them hobbies instead of jobs sometimes. Have you ever noticed that anything we like, we don't call it work? If you like to garden, it's not work to you. It's just fun, it's your hobby. But if you don't like to garden, it's like, oh, I gotta go work in the garden. So perhaps pursuing things that we enjoy. But Amuba's going to be a slave. So he's not going to get to pick, is he? If you're a slave, then the master says, do this, and you got to do it. So how, if you're in that situation, how do you make your own happiness? How could you be as happy in a cottage, in a poorer place, as you would be in a palace or on a throne? What do we do to make our own happiness? Yeah, Luke.
Because you won't be a slave.
What? But he is a slave. He is a slave. So how does his mother think he might be able to make his own happiness?
By making friends there?
Okay.
By doing the stuff well.
Okay. Now those are
The master's cross.
okay. Those are yes. I love all of these. So what was the first thing you said, Julia? Making friends. So, are we, is making friends at least to some extent in our own power? Like, a little bit. I mean, if there are no other human beings, that's hard. But if there are other human beings, if they are all mean and they don't want to be a friend, you can't help that. But in general, if we are friendly, right, other people are receptive and you can make friends. Doing your work well, Bryn said, right? Is that what you said? Yeah. Can you think of an example of someone in the Bible who was under really bad circumstances, but he made friends and he also did his work very well?
Joseph.
Joseph, I'm sorry. You gave me reasons, so it was Kristen's turn to give me something. So she says, you know what? Have you, Amuba, you're going to be a slave, but you have the power to make your own happiness. Have you ever thought about that? That we have the power to make our own happiness? Do we also then have the power to make ourselves miserable? Yes. How do we do that? How do you make yourself even more miserable?
Not looking on the bright side?
Yeah, and so can you give me an example? Or yeah, go ahead. What are you going to say?
Figure of purpose.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Well, that was extreme. Yes. But Christian. Okay, Christian brought it up, not me. Just remember. I didn't bring up the finger. But what if my finger is caught in a trap and I cut it off to get out of the trap? Then I would be making my own happiness by doing that, sort of, because maybe wild animals are going to get me and I have to cut off my finger to get out of the trap. Do you see what I mean? So it kind of depends on the circumstances, although that would be a very extreme circumstance. But how about something not as dramatic as Christian's? Luke. Okay, so she said glass half full, right? Did you say that? And he said glass. What does that mean? What is glass half full, glass half empty? What do we mean when we say that Yeah, Luke.
Looking on the negative or positive side.
So, for example, you were going to go to Six Flags and you woke up and it's thunderstorms. What's the half empty? Or what's you can't go. Shoot, I can't go now and have a day of fun because it's raining and storming. Is there any half full?
Watching the lightning on your porch.
Okay, so you know what? Why don't I just get myself a beverage and I can just stay in my pajamas because I don't have to go anywhere today. And I'll put my feet up and I'll watch the awesome light show and it'll be amazing. And then maybe we'll make popcorn and watch a movie. Yeah. Like that's okay. Well, let's make the best of it. So maybe then you're eating the popcorn and you're watching the movie and life doesn't seem so bad suddenly. And maybe you kind of forget, oh, this was the day we were going to go to Six Flags. Do you see? And I had a choice. Or I could just sit on the couch like this. I'm going to be mad all day because I didn't get to go to Six Flags. And you can't make me stop. I'm just don't even talk to me. Don't even talk to me. I don't want popcorn. I don't want your movie. Just go away. And you can do that to yourself. And she says, Amuba, don't do it to yourself. Yes, Luke.
You could just scream on the ground.
Don't do that. And hopefully if any of you, even if you were like 3 years old and you did that, I hope that your parents would tell you to stow it. Yes.
Indoor Malibu Jacks.
Well, there you go. See, but that would be see, you can make the best of it. Okay, one other thing I wanted to mention, because this comes up especially in the plot. The priest Amaris, what does he think about the Egyptian gods? Do you remember? Evelyn, do you?
All different parts of one God.
They're all different aspects or parts of one actual true God. He thinks there aren't many gods. There's one. And remember we were talking earlier about the names we give the true God? Like he's the God who sees, the God who provides, the God of armies. And they're all aspects. It says this in the book. He was aware that Osiris and Isis, the 6 other great gods, and innumerable divinities the Egyptians worshipped were in themselves no gods at all, but mere attributes of the power, the wisdom, the goodness, the anger of the one great God, a God so mighty that his name was unknown. Wow. Amaris has some interesting ideas. And apparently, this is the secret knowledge that the super high priests of Egypt got. That's made up. We don't know that that was really the super high knowledge. But in this book, it is. At the end of your reading, they're traveling. And they're seeing the sights, they're seeing the Egyptian animals and everything. And they ran across a group of people that lived up to the north. I've heard of them, Father, says Chebron to his dad. They belong to the same race as the shepherd kings, who were such bitter tyrants to Egypt. How is it that they stayed behind when the shepherds were driven out? This was an invading force from long ago. It says, they are of the same race, but they came not with them and formed no part of their conquering armies. They were relations of the Joseph, who, as you have read in your history, was chief minister of Egypt. And he goes on to give a history of what group of people? What is this group of people?
Israelites.
They're Israelites. So now we know when this book is happening. It's happening after Joseph, but before or after Moses? Before Moses, because the Israelites are still living in Egypt. And they're talking about, well, do they wash up the animals? It's like, no, they have this one God. They have this one God. It's like some of them do, because they've been here a long time. But most of them have this one God thing that they worship. They're the Israelites. So now if we were wondering, I wonder when this book is happening. After Joseph, before Moses. Does that make sense? All right. Where you left off, they are still on their travels in the area where the Israelites are living. Read chapters 6 or 10. I erased it already. the next section of Dorothy Mills, write your paper, do something cool with your papyrus. If you do something and you want to show it to everybody, bring it back and show us what you did with it. And I mean, like if you draw your name on it or something like that, or draw a picture. And I will see you next week. All right? Have a good week, guys.